Let us not ignore this story that has been going on, the Jirongo'S story, that now it's turning into something bigger than just an ordinary accident, from the statements of certain individuals and more details of this particular accident being discussed in media platforms by different individuals. And now it's coming out clearly that out of 10, most Kenyans are now rating this particular accident at 8 or 7 of not having had the likelihood of actually occurring at all. We want to put it before the mirror alongside other statements of Mudhama that has also arisen alongside this particular accident that occurred, that claimed the life of Jirongo, and also that now advises Kalonzo on the steps to take moving into the 2027 major polls. If time allows, we'll also take a look at the feud between Jalango and Sifuna over Nairobi and Lang'ata that is ensuing over also the past few hours. But let's first start at the Jirongo story. Now on 13th, around 3 a.m., Cyrus Jirongo, a former key player on the youth for KANU in 1992 and also in the Moi government, and a very controversial politician in the Kenyan political space that for quite some time has been looking at President William Ruto not as a president but one of his former errand boys in the YK 92 days, succumbed. The reason for death was the fact that he got into an accident which was as a result of rather a head-on collision with a bus that have since claimed his life. The bus that reportedly had 65 passengers has only had one eyewitness recollecting this particular story, being the driver, who Kenyans now are saying looks not to be so remorseful. But that story aside, because we'll take a look at it, is the fact that now sources say that Cyrus Jirongo left Karen meeting at around 10:45 to 11 p.m. in the night, having called his caretaker in Gigiri that he was headed home, and so he left Karen for home. And so this whole accident taking place in Naivasha with the vehicle facing the direction of Nairobi, as if Jirongo was leaving his village home to Nairobi, is also a hoax that now Fred Gumo and other friends of Jirongo want the government to look into and to give them results. So if we take a look at this story, we want to take a look at really what is going on, but we also do not want to look or interpret more into the facts. We just want to outlay what has happened and the new facts around Jirongo's accident that have emerged. Now, from the very beginning, the headline is that Jirongo, of course, his Mercedes crashes and it crashes as he drives from home to Nairobi in Naivasha. But then a recollection of this is taken differently by certain eyewitnesses who were with Jirongo that night prior to his death. So as we wait for more details to come, and including the post-mortem results, this is the fact that December 12th night, that is at Karen, alongside Wetangula and one of the Oasis premises in Karen, Jirongo is witnessed to be in a meeting. So people in attendance at this meeting is the Speaker of the National Assembly, Wetangula, Jirongo himself, the owner of the Oasis place, and another individual that this eyewitness, the senator who identifies these particular individuals, say that he does not know of. And then at 3 a.m. on 13th, Jirongo, of course, is declared dead in Naivasha while he is leaving his Kakamega home and headed to Nairobi. Now, a lot of people have interpreted into this particular facts, including members of Jirongo's family who now want answers, because they are trying to ask that what was Jirongo doing in Naivasha. They are trying to say that Jirongo's accident taking place in Naivasha is not a natural occurrence or a natural accident. The reason that they are buttressing this particular fact, or rather argument that they have on, is the fact that Naivasha is nowhere in between leaving Karen and heading to Gigiri. And so a lot of questions have arisen, including questions like number one, why would Jirongo call his, of course, caretaker, saying that he'd be home around 10 and then fail to be home and be around Naivasha at around 3 a.m. But also, if you look at the other side, Other Kenyans have also taken the angle that Jirongo is a grown-up adult who has money and who has a self-will, and so perhaps he had an engagement or something that he had to settle in Naivasha that he didn't have to disclose to the people that were in this particular gathering, that he was headed to Naivasha. And also considering the fact that he has been a public figure who is of course been controversial and has been living in the fear that because of what he knows and because of certain unsettled scores from YK92 team, his life would have been in danger. Of course, he might have not disclosed his location. And so this particular group of Kenyans believe that perhaps after leaving the current meeting at around 10:45, Jirongo went for his other meetings, rather affairs around Naivasha, and while he was coming back, that is when he had this head-on collision with the bus. Now, with these two sources of information leveled aside, let's say for example Jirongo had an accident. Now let's take a look at the accident. The accident is also the most interesting part that now makes this entire Jirongo thing questionable. The accident now allegedly was between Jirongo, who was a solo occupant of his vehicle, and a bus, a public service bus that was ferrying individuals from Nairobi, of course, to Busia. And the only person that has given a witness statement of this particular accident is the driver. Now, other people have looked into ordinary accidents taking place in Kenya, where if an accident occurs in Kenya, most likely than not, you'd find Kenyans surrounding around the accident scene, trying to take a look at what is really going on, or trying to rescue the people that are injured in that particular accident. For this Jirongo accident, not only was that scene not there, but the 65 passengers who are also the part of this particular accident have also not found an opportunity to make any witness statements, leaving a lot of questions to whether or not this accident took place. Furthermore, the owner of the bus have also not made any statement. So other than the driver who has made statements on this particular accident happening, no one else saw this accident happen. And so the driver says that the vehicle of Jirongo was leaving the petrol station and joined the lane without making way while he was coming from Nairobi to Busia. That is the driver of the bus himself, and that is the result of that particular collision. But then the injuries that have been confirmed by the people that took a look at Jirongo's body before he was taken to the morgue confirms that there were no such serious bodily injuries that would come from that head-on collisions. Others have also looked at the pictures of the bus circulating around social media, saying that this particular bus do not show any impacts to the effect that you'd say it got into a serious head-on collision with the Mercedes of Jirongo. And so the big question is, where are the passengers and what are they saying? None of them has made a statement. Were they even there? Where are the villagers around this particular place, or any other eyewitness who saw this particular accident take place and at the petrol station where Jirongo's car was leaving to join the main road? What has the petrol station people said? Is there any record of Jirongo's car being in the petrol station at that particular time? These are the questions Kenyans are asking, and other questions are still even coming up beyond this. Like as the owner of the bus made statement, they was asking, have they made any statement confirming that this is a driver of their bus, or also confirming that their bus got into any accident of this sort? Or was this driver also the owner of the bus? Why does the driver seem so implanted and so unbothered from this particular accident? Now Kenyans can look beyond the calmness of the driver, and others are saying now that the driver rather seems more calm in his state while detailing this particular accident, showing no remorse for the life lost, even if other Kenyans, including Mike Sonko, have since congratulated the driver for actually owning up and apologizing. So then other questions including, why did Jirongo call his caretaker saying that he'd be home and then fail to show home in that particular stipulated time? So these statements are coming up, of course, and Kenyans are saying that now the likelihood of this accident having taken place is really 1 out of a scale of 10 if asked, but we hope to see now more details from the post-mortem and more details from the passengers if they come up, or even from the petrol stations on why, of course, what happened in the last few hours of Jirongo between Karen and Gigiri that resulted him in Naivasha, but with his vehicle facing the direction of Nairobi, and all these allegations of the accident. But we really hope that this particular accident also that happened, that the other passengers that were in this particular bus also got home safely, and if they were injured, then they are, you know, getting good medical attention. And we hope now it becomes as a message for road users moving forward, of course, to take care of themselves in the road. Now, there are other individuals whose names were mentioned in this particular last meeting, including the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Wasika Wetangula. And Wasika Wetangula, now his speech concerning Jirongo'S demise was part of the speech that he was making on the demise of the member of parliament that was being buried in the coastal region. And Mr. Wasika was just detailing how in a period of less than 1 week he had lost people that he had had a final meeting and conversations with in the last hour, and that must be really, you know, heavy on him right now, handling that particular loss, where one is actually really close to him within the family and another one is close to him within the community. Now, Mr. Wetangula says that he left Uganda, the Yala Games, for Bungoma on Monday, and he spent time with his brother on that particular Monday. And after spending time with his brother, he left for Nairobi on that particular Monday. And so after leaving for Nairobi, that particular night that he left for Nairobi, he received a call that his brother had passed on, and now he is set to be buried on the 9th, you know, of this month. And saying that within that period of 1 week, on the Friday, being the day that they were concluding the Jamhuri Day, on 12th, Jirongo called him to have a small conversation with him, and he spent time with Jirongo, he says clearly, between 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. And so after 9:30 p.m. he said he was exhausted and he left for his own ordeals later on at home. And in the morning he was waking up to notifications of condolences, of course, telling him that Cyrus Jirongo has also lost his life. So this is actually a loss that he has experienced in 1 week. 2 people that he had the final conversations with, and when he was waking up the following morning, they were gone. Of course, those are very heavy losses, both personally, and this is also a Speaker of the National Assembly who is suffering from a political loss recently, Ford Kenya having lost in the Chole Kabuchai ward. So Mr. Wetangula have been hit by the loss of both his brother and the loss of Jirongo, who he had the last meeting conversations with prior to their demise, both his brother and Jirongo. Now, on comments of this particular road accidents, no, he has not made any comments on this, because of course that is not his position as the Speaker of the National Assembly to comment on such things. If there is any inquiry coming from the family, that now Fred Gumo speaks on behalf in the recent questions, asking the government to look into this particular cause of demise of Jirongo, then that would be left to the relevant authorities, including the DCI and the police, to give the family those relevant answers. But Mr. Wetangula spent 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. and even when these conversations of 10:45 p.m. were being had on the last, you know, points of conversations when Jirongo was seen in Oasis in Karen, Mr. Wetangula's take is that he had already left those premises. So yes, the country is mourning Jirongo, but a part of the country feels like the accident was staged. The driver looks implanted, looks like a government or an army officer. Others have accused it of being that, but others have said that it looks like a very genuine individual that has gone on to even apologize. Others have said that he looks like a very independent person to this scene that might not even have witnessed the evidence. But those are Kenyans speaking and expressing opinion in their own rights to speech that is protected by the Constitution, but has nothing on the real occurrence of this accident. So we wait to hear more information and keep you updated on whether there are now more eyewitnesses from the bus, from the neighborhood, from the petrol station, from the bus owners, from any other person that might have seen Jirongo past 12 into 3 a.m. to actually verify or corroborate these particular statements arising out of that particular accident. Away from that, ladies and gentlemen, was the story and statements of Mudhama, who was speaking somewhere in the coastal region, and was talking about just the approach to this 2027 general elections now that we are nearing them. And he had some very interesting takes that we also want to put before the mirror before we conclude this episode. Now, Mudama says that even if Gachagua remained in the race alone, he would still not be voted by Kenyans. He looks at the united opposition and he says that the only evil seed within the united opposition is the evil seed of tribalism. And he says that he has been here through elections and he has seen a lot of elections come and go. And he has seen Kibaki, of course, that he says was vehemently voted by Kenyans. Seen Uhuru Kenyatta that he says was voted by Kenyans. He says it's in Ruto that was voted by Kenyans. And in all these statements, even he says in other previous governments, including Moi and the Kenyatta's government, he has never had this president pronounce tribalism. But he says now the united opposition is trying to project itself as a tool that is geared forward towards with tribalism. In Mudama's words, he says that, of course, as I said, that even if Gachagua remained in the race alone, Kenyans still would not elect him as president. And now Mudama prays for God to give Kenya a tribeless president. He says that Ruto might be being accused of tribalism, but he has never had anywhere where Ruto has shown aspect of tribalism or has spoken about it publicly. Of course, this is even coming after a lot of individuals are saying that a lot of state corporations and positions of appointments are filled with President Ruto's tribe mates. But Mudama holds those statements. So if you stand for Kenyans, Mudama says that right now any person that shows that they stand for tribalism, he distances himself from those people. But anyone who stands for Kenya, he says he will die with them. So in quoting, he says, if you stand for Kenyan, then I will die with you. He says that. So Mudama says Rigathi have surpassed the united opposition's voices, saying that the united opposition presented themselves as an alternative, but now there is one voice that apparently seems to be louder than all the voices in that particular arrangement. Now he replaced the Nairobi statement of saying that how comes would sane people go and vote for a united opposition where one principal in that particular agreement has already slotted out Nairobi for himself individually, even before calling anyone before the table. Of course, he's still just trying to downplay the fact that the united opposition is not united if from his statements he feels Rigathi Gachagua holds the overall voice of the united opposition. So in his further statements, Mudama recollects how the country voted previously, of course, saying that from Moi's time that was elected now during the election periods of Moi to the Ruto's time, Kenyans vote not as a tribe but holistically for a president. And so he says that the united opposition's approach, including Kalonzo's approach to this particular seat in 2027, should be a national one and not one based on sectional tribes that divides Kenyans than unite them. Now he asks Kalonzo to ask God's people, including priests, to pray for him so that he can find discernment and win for Kenya in a united front. That was very interesting. He told Honorable Kalonzo to be prayed for so that God can open his eyes. Of course, you remember these statements are coming after the senator for Homa Bay, Kajwang, also asked Kalonzo to change his circle. So this conversation that Rigathi Gachagua is the solid wing of the united opposition is good, but some group of Kenyans also have a conversation that Rigathi Gachagua might be the weakest link to the united opposition. And so goes the saying, sometimes you are just as strong as your weakest link. Whereas one group looks at it as the biggest strength of the united opposition, another group looks at it as the biggest hindrance to the united opposition. But what does the united opposition say? They say that they will stay united until 2027, and these outside voices will not interfere with how they carry out their businesses. So it's Mudama's prayer now that Kenya can open up for anyone, that a person in Kisii can leave Kisii and go do business in Mandera, and a person from Mandera can go and marry in Eldoret and open up spaces for Kenyans in a way that the nation is welcoming to everyone and people are not divided alongside tribal lines. And so he says he will support the united opposition only if the shift comes from the tribal lines to policies of standing up for Kenyans. So that has been a very interesting recap for you, ladies and gentlemen, looking at the Jirongo statement from this anthill that most people are making a mountain, but could be a mountain that other people are looking at as an anthill, on whether Jirongo left Karen to other endeavors before going to Gigiri, or whether Jirongo's prior intention was to leave Karen to Gigiri but found himself somewhere in Naivasha while his vehicle is facing Nairobi involuntarily. As more details keep coming around to that story here at the People's Mirror, we will commentate and recap it for you. But also on Mudama now warning Kalonzo to look for God's cure and God's prayer, while Kalonzo has been in church tour, actually acknowledging the presence of God in his political stage, is a humorous one, and we hope to see whether or not Kalonzo will heed to those particular advice. More on that story also will follow here at the People's Mirror. Until our next episode.